When Celia comes, 'tis earthquake hour. The bed vibrates like kettle drums. It is a grand display of power when Celia comes. When Celia farts, my hasty nose sniffs up the fragrance from her pots. Shamed are the violets and rose when Celia farts. Hey guys, that's a little ditty I put together this week. I hope you like it. Hope you love it. I worked real hard on it. No, this is one of 20th century occultist Aleister Crowley's poems. Titled, as you might guess, When Celia Farts. Not exactly the kind of poem I heard growing up in English lit class. Would have been a huge crowd pleaser in 8th grade. Who am I kidding? He would have been a crowd pleaser between 6th and grade and sophomore year of college. Maybe not wildly scandalous today, but Aleister was writing poems like that at the dawn of the 20th century when he had to pen them under a pseudonym and publish them via foreign presses to avoid being arrested in Victorian-era Britain on obscenity charges. Aleister Crowley was an infamous Satanist in the sense that he worshipped evil and wanted, among other things, to bring the devil himself into this world. Now, many modern Satanists will dispute this label. They say he was no Satanist at all. They tend to base this thought on Anton LaVey founding the Church of Satan roughly 20 years after Crowley's passing, but that's just semantics. You don't get to redefine the term Satanist and then assert that your new meaning is now the only acceptable definition of said term. Crowley was a Satanist in the sense that he wanted to bring down Christianity. He opposed it strongly. He also didn't believe in it. He had an interesting set of beliefs. He didn't believe, but at the same time, did believe in malevolent spirits and sentient beings living in other dimensions, beings that he knew Christians would refer to as demons. One demon being the equivalent of the devil, being Beelzebub. And he wanted and actually tried to invoke these actual demons and bring them into our world. Who was this dark, strange man? And how was he able to leave the mark he did on Western culture? All is revealed, the great beast exposed, and more Celia-esque wackadoodle poetry and writings and musings today on Timesuck.
You're listening to Timesuck.
What's up, time suckers and space lizards? I'm Dan Cummins, a.k.a. the Prophet of Nimrod, a.k.a. Suckmaster, a.k.a. the missing eye of Bojangles. And this is Timesuck. Recording from a hotel room in Brea, California today, but the sound of the suck will be polished up by the Reverend Dr. Krell in scenic Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, before it hits your ear membranes. So if you do hear any little different ambient noises, you're like, oh, it sounds like the acoustics are a little different. Well, that's why. Had to do a different location this week. Monday will be the same location. Circumstances dictate. Got to record some of these on the road. Got to be on the Church of What's Happening Now with Joey Coco Diaz. What an awesome time, man. Just the other day. That episode is out now. And was also a guest on the Adam Carolla Show. So fun to be on two of the biggest comedy podcasts out there just same week. I remember listening to Adam many times when he was on Love Lines many years ago on FM radio. If you snuck over to the suck from either show, man, thank you. I hope you stay. Hope you have a good time. Recording an episode of The Tinfoil Hat with Sam Tripoli later today. Love that wackadoodle. He's my favorite conspiracy nut. A lot of fun podcasting this week. Hail Nimrod. More shows at Brea at the Improv this weekend, and then back to my wife's hometown, back in Cleveland at Hilarities, March 22 through the 24th. You fucking get there, Cleveland. You show up. Salt Lake City, April 20th through the 21st. Charlotte, Atlanta, Birmingham, Huntsville, Dallas, Houston, and now in San Antonio, all part of the 2018 Flat Earth Tour. More dates at dancummins.tv. Also, hoodies and pullovers have been restocked in the store finally. I know those have been out for a while. Now they're back. More Secret Suck shirts are being ordered. And new stickers have been ordered. New stickers I'm very excited about. Vinyl decals being ordered. Keeping the suck train moving down the tracks. And now, Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley would be born into wealth, really, into a typical Victorian British Christian culture. He would come to despise. He would die virtually penniless and basically alone in a post-Victorian world that largely despised him. He was a polarizing man. He was a poet, an author, an occultist, an artist, mostly a mystic. He created his own religion, Thelema, whose guiding core principle is do what thou wilt. Right? Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love unto will. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt. Crowley, a.k.a. the Great Beast, as he himself liked to be called, became infamous for his scandalous ways. He did a lot of what he wilt, which involved a lot more than dirty poetry. And, he has name recognition today, mostly via living on through pop culture. Heavy metal pioneer Ozzy Osbourne, released a tribute to Aleister called Mr. Crowley in 1980 on his debut solo release, Blizzard of Oz. It's made a variety of top 50 most influential metal songs of all time lists. The Beatles included Mr. Crowley alongside dozens of other influential figures on the cover of their Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. David Bowie was fascinated with Crowley, referencing him in lyrics, and you can see in the way he dressed during some of his Ziggy Stardust kind of era costumes. Very Crowley-esque. Led Zeppelin, Tool, so many somewhat obscure Scandinavian metal bands have been heavily influenced or have been obsessed or both with Aleister Crowley. He's become very influential, especially after his death and kind of Western culture's mainstream break from religion. You know, especially during the 60s counterculture revolution, his name and kind of ethos would make a resurgence. He would influence, Timothy Leary, amongst others, as part of that kind of revolution. And that's why we're looking into him today. So let's get to know this strange man with a lengthy deep dive of a Timesuck timeline.
Strap on those boots, soldier. We're marching down a Timesuck timeline.
Edward Alexander Crowley was born at 30 Clarendon Square in the Royal Leamington Spa, Warwickshire, England, on October 12th, 1875. And he was born into a life of comfort and luxury. His father, Edward Crowley, 46, at the age of Aleister's birth, was trained as an engineer, but due to his share of a lucrative family brewing business, Crowley's Alton Ales, a business that would last from 1821 until 1947, that's a damn good run, he was already retired before his son was born. He had a strained relationship with his mother, Emily Bertha Bishop, who would nickname her apparently unruly child, the Beast, guessing this Christian woman would come to really regret that nickname years later when he became the most notorious occultist of his era. Young Edward's childhood was filled by a combination of the lack of financial concern and yet no real earthly enjoyment of that wealth. His family was extremely conservative. Both parents were members of the Exclusive Brethren, an offshoot of the Plymouth Brethren. Now, the Plymouth Brethren are alive and well, by the way. They seem to exist mainly in the UK and Australia, headquartered in Ermington, Australia. But they also exist to some degree in the US, Canada, Caribbean, elsewhere in Europe, Argentina. It originated in Dublin in the 1820s as an offshoot of Anglicanism, and it seems a little wackadoodle. For example, discipline among brethren may involve formal social ostracism or shunning to various degrees, depending on what kind of brethren group it is. For instance, people placed under discipline may be asked to not attend any group functions, which are purely social. People may decline to eat, around them, even shake hands with them when people are under discipline. That's fucking really. You're gonna shame sinning adult members of the congregation by not shaking their hands because they've been naughty. You're gonna shun them. Get the fuck out of here. I hate that stuff. What happened to forgiveness and the church being a shelter in the storm, a light in the darkness, place of solace for the good and the wicked alike? These people sound super judgy. Reasons for being put under discipline on the naughty list by both the open and exclusive brethren include disseminating gross scriptural or doctrinal error. That's you can read a lot into that. So basically, if you don't believe in their exact interpretation of scripture or question it in any way, you're under discipline now. Get in the corner, face the corner. Don't look at anyone in the eye. If you're involved in anything that's deemed sexually immoral, including adultery, homosexual acts. Yep, total homophobes. Premarital sex, then you're on the naughty list. Get in the fucking corner. If you're being accused of irregular or illegal financial dealings, you can be put under discipline. Extreme cases, members may be asked to shun or divorce members of their own family, members of their immediate family. So, man, not a fan of that. Not a fan of when the church is like, nope, you can't talk to your dad anymore. Can't talk to your daughter. Okay, Scientology, take it easy. I should add that the church does not consider itself denominational. So there is no firm hierarchy, and various churches can institute policies as they see fit. So if you are a member and your church is way more relaxed, you're like, that's not true. That's not how we act. Well, maybe that's not how your congregation acts, but others do. I just feel like this is important to add, just to give kind of the tone of his childhood, of Crowley's childhood. It doesn't sound like like he was going to a real fun church, and this is back in Victorian era England, so it was way more strict than it is now. It doesn't sound like he's going to a place where he's singing songs about God's love and forgiveness. It sounds like there's a little more fire and brimstone. However, both of young Edward's parents super into it, and so is he. The family's hardcore. They don't celebrate Christmas because it's too pagan. Not in this house. Neither of them ever have a job when young Edward is alive, because they're already got their money, so it gives them a ton of free time to kind of throw into their faith, which isn't always good. Edward Sr. even became a preacher, traveling to nearby towns to preach the good word. On February 29th, 1880, that'd be a weird time jump. On February 29th, 1880, when young Eddie is 4, the Crowleys bring a second child into the world, Grace, who only lasts a few hours. She dies the same day. She only lived for 5 hours. First of many early childhood deaths in this tale, by the way. How tragic for her poor parents. He would remain an only child after that. And Crowley would later say he remembered being taken to see the body of Grace, and in his own words, he would say, "The incident made a curious impression on me. I did not see why I should be disturbed so uselessly. I couldn't do any good. The child was dead. It was none of my business." This cold, kind of logical, heartless attitude, man, continued throughout his life. The incident, I'm strongly guessing, pushed the Crowleys deeper into their faith. They now became pathologically anti-pleasure. They were constantly warning young Edward against sin and constantly reminding him of the consequences. Hell is the consequence. So, home life takes a dip as far as fun goes after Sis dies. And yet, early on in his childhood, little Eddie didn't seem to mind. Yeah, he didn't mind all this preaching. It was what he knew. It was his world as a young child. He wasn't rebellious, actually. The beast persona would emerge later. He was a daddy's boy. He was devoted to his father, and as a child, he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. He wanted to possibly be a preacher himself. Inspired by his father's faith, he became a fervent little brother, Plymouth brother. He studied the Bible eagerly. The prophetic passages in the book of Revelation, the beast 666, the scarlet woman, those particular passages, fascinated him especially. He readily imagined himself a servant of God, just like his father, battling Satan and his hordes. He'd later say of his dad, years later when he was deep into the occult, he would say, "My father, as wrong-headed as he was, had humanity and a degree of common sense." I always liked Dad. I always gave some respect to Dad. And then on March 5th, 1887, when little Eddie is only 11, Ed Sr. pulls a dick move and he dies of tongue cancer. Jesus, man. Fatal tongue cancer in the late 19th century had to have been a motherfucker of a way to go out. I can only imagine what kind of treatments old-timey doctors were prescribing. I reckon it's time we stick a bunch of leeches on your lung. Yeah, I want you to take opium in the morning, laudanum in the evening, both oral and suppository forms, and I I'll probably have to cut off one of your legs. And yes, even in merry old Victorian England, doctors talked like old-timey horse thieves. The death of his father was a pivotal moment in young Edward's life. He became angry with God. How could God take the life of a man so devoted to him? It wasn't fair. He denounced the church, and then he denounced his mother along with it, who threw herself even harder into the church. And I feel like, had his father just not died, no one would be talking about Aleister Crowley today. I know I've said it a million times in this show, but it's always fascinating to me when you have these moments, these pivotal moments where had this one thing not happened, the person never would have got put on the trajectory that led them to becoming famous, infamous, notorious, whatever. There would literally be no Aleister because he would never change his name later, in kind of anger. Emily and young Edward moved in with her brother, Eddie's uncle, Tom Bishop, in the Drayton Gardens section of London later that year, and it didn't go well. Young Crowley, not a fan of Uncle Tom. He later described him pretty poorly, saying, "No more cruel fanatic, no meaner villain ever walked the earth." So, they weren't going to grab beers, together after he left the house, years afterwards. Uncle Tom ran a household so strict, he even forbade young Edward from reading David Copperfield. Didn't want him reading Dickens' David Copperfield because there was a certain character in that work named Emily, and this might cause Crowley to disrespect his mother due to her sharing the same name. So that guy sounds like a lot of fun. Frustrated under his uncle's authoritarian rule, angry over his father's untimely death, young Crowley starts to rebel and become the beast, to become quite the disturbed young man. He described a childhood incident years later in his autobiography, The Confessions of Aleister Crowley. So fucked up. He says, "I therefore caught a cat, and having administered a large dose of arsenic, I chloroformed it, hanged it above the gas jet, stabbed it, cut its throat, smashed its skull, and when it had been pretty thoroughly burnt, drowned it and threw it out of the window, that the fall might remove the ninth life. In fact, the operation was successful. I had killed the cat." Jesus, yeah, I think so. Overkill, way overkill. Fairly sadistic. Man, the torture and murder of neighborhood pets, never a good indication of future positive behavior. That shit doesn't seem to come up in the biographies of people like Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey. Can you imagine Oprah talking about doing that, about chloroforming, hanging, stabbing, burning, drowning, smashing, and tossing a cat out a window? As a little girl, I knew I wanted to achieve more than anyone in my family ever had. One day after returning to my mother's home in Milwaukee, sick of bouncing back and forth between my parents' homes, never feeling truly wanted in either place, I became so angry that I motherfucked my neighbor's cat to death. I smashed that piece of shit skull. And then, later I'd move into more charity, and no, it's like it never happens. And I know that didn't sound anything like Oprah. If any of you listening did something similar as a kid, you're going to have to probably work the rest of your life on keeping your inner psychopath in check. Pushing young Crowley's youthful anger and deviant behavior into a religious direction is one Reverend H. D'Arcy Champney. The Reverend Dr. Champney ran the Sons of Brethren Christian School in Cambridge. Crowley described this time as a boyhood in hell. And it doesn't sound like he was extremely well liked by the students there. He was often placed in solitary, for misbehavior. See, that's what I was talking about earlier. A little bit of that brethren discipline. They love to isolate people. Once placed in solitary, neither student nor master could speak to him or he to them. He received only bread and water to eat. During play hours, he walked around and around the schoolroom. During work hours, he was placed alone on the playground, so they just kept him fucking ostracized. The strain of this isolation apparently affected his health, affected his kidneys, and he had to leave school altogether for a couple years. His health deteriorating to the point that doctors were afraid he would die in his teens. Once it was discovered he had a kidney disorder, he was placed back in school. And then the other boys, I guess, would bully him unmercifully. His kidneys were regarded as one of the best places to kind of punch him. Fucking kids, man. I remember kidney shots. Oh my God. Man, to this day, just from getting I think from middle school, just leftover vestiges of middle school, tomfoolery. I do not like having my head smacked, and I fucking hate having my kidneys tapped at all. It just takes me right back to junior high. Somebody whopping you in the back of the head. I was a tiny kid, I was not anybody who wanted to whop me could whop me. Oh my God. So that sucked for him. Early 1892, the 16-year-old Crowley's sexual life began, and it took a deviant turn pretty quickly, which is fitting, considering his later behavior. He lost his virginity to a theater girl when he was 16, fairly normal, but then his next sexual encounter was with the family parlor maid. Not as normal, but I get it. But then he had sex with her on his mother's bed. That's where they had sex, which, that's a statement. That's a statement fuck. He blamed the repressive nature of his home for pushing him towards this magical affirmation of my revolt. Well, this magical affirmation, he's pretty happy about it. He's pretty excited to have had her on his mother's very bed, he'd say. And I got him interested in sex magic later, as we'll find out, this concept of his. Later the same year, he was expelled from school for contracting gonorrhea from a prostitute. That seems like a strange thing for your school to find out about, let alone expel you for, but that's what happened. Around the age of 18, in 1893, Crowley received an initial inheritance. I think this is another pivotal moment kind of in his life. I feel like had this not happened, he also wouldn't have gone on the path he did. He received somewhere between 30 and 40,000 pounds, equivalent to about 500,000 pounds today. So, nice little head start. Nice little head start. He invested most of it in real estate, bought a few townhouses, rented them out. He took some of the rest. He became a silent partner in another successful pub. Kind of expanded, his family's kind of brewery background. He used the remainder to go to school where he studied business, and by the time he graduated, he had almost doubled his inheritance through shrewd investments. And get the fuck out of here. This isn't the life of a decent, sensible person we're talking about. We're talking about an irresponsible hedonist. He didn't do any of that. No, he joined some mountaineering club. He'd do mountaineering off and on throughout his youth. He'd be actually fairly successful at it. He just heads off to the Swiss Alps and dicks around for a while climbing mountains, which is exactly what you do when you have a trust fund. He didn't earn that money. Why not just go fuck around with it? 1895. It's weird, the mountaineering thing. A lot of people point out it's this big impressive thing with him. Yes, but asterisks. Whenever at 18, you just don't ever have to work, and then you do something like some hobby, kind of like that, especially in the pioneering phase of it, and then you do something successful. I'm always kind of impressed, but it's mostly the reason you were able to be successful at mountaineering is because you never had to pay any goddamn bills. Right? I'm sure a lot of us could be pretty successful at some weird hobby if we had literally no other responsibilities in life. Anyway, 1895, Crowley began studying at Trinity College at Cambridge, where he studied science, literature, philosophy. He passed a special examination in chemistry in 1898, leaves school early during his final spring term without bothering to get a degree. Another very trust fund kid type decision. He becomes Aleister in college, changing his name from Edward. He would explain the logic behind the change, and years later saying, "For many years I had loathed being called Alec, partly because of the unpleasant sound and sight of the word, partly because it was the name by which my mother called me." So many mommy issues. And she called him that, because his middle name was Alexander, and her husband, before he died, was also named Edward. So it makes sense, you got two Eds in the house. You can call one Alexander. Edward did not seem to suit me, and the diminutives, Ted and Ned, were even less appropriate. Alexander was too long, and Sandy suggested tow hair and freckles. I had read in some book or other that the most favorable name for becoming famous was one consisting of a dactyl, followed by a spondy, as at the end of a hexameter, like Jeremy Taylor. Aleister Crowley fulfilled these conditions, and Aleister is the Gaelic form of Alexander. And by the way, dactyl is a metrical foot beat in a line of poetry consisting of one long and then two short syllables, or of one stressed and then two unstressed syllables, such as tenderly. A spondy is a metrical foot consisting of two long or stressed syllables, such as downtown, an equal amount of stress on each syllable. I don't know that I pull it off in any word. I feel like I'm always stressing one syllable. A hexameter is a line of verse consisting of 6 metrical feet. An example would be Henry Wadsworth Longfellow in Evangeline, a little piece of this, Now had the season returned when the nights grow colder and longer, and the retreating sun the sign of the scorpion enters. Birds of passage sailed through the leaden air, from the icebound, desolate northern bays to the shores of tropical islands. I guess there's 6 beats there. There's 6 little, moments there, basically separated by commas or periods, each one of them. For those of you, who didn't just fall asleep. What kind of poem was that? I didn't know any of this shit, by the way. Had to look it all up. Total English lit thing to do, by the way. Change your name to realign it to like a common poetic rhythm. Such a again, like trust fund, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, like English lit. I was an English minor in college. I can see like some of the drama kids doing something like this. I will not be called Pam anymore. I am Aphrodite's. I am Aphrodite's now. I'm Aphrodite's Ballaster, Esquire. Aleister continues, to adopt it would satisfy my romantic ideals. The atrocious spelling Aleister was suggested as the correct form by my cousin Gregor, who ought to have known better. In any case, I love when you're critiquing random family members, for your name. My middle name's Brent, To be like, my aunt gave me the middle name Brent, which is a common man's name, when I should have been given something more, respective of my great birth. Like Nathaniel the Great. Daniel Nathaniel the Great Cubbins. It would have been what I preferred. These fucking pretentious bastards. So then he goes, in any case, Aleister makes a very bad dactyl. For these reasons, I saddled myself with my present nom de guerre. I can't say that I feel sure that I facilitated the process of becoming famous, or that it facilitated the process of becoming... I should doubtless have done so, whatever name I had chosen. So, he was an eccentric and fucking pretentious cat. Aleister also did some sexual experimenting while in college, beginning a homosexual relationship with Jerome Paulet. In October 1897, that would last for months. Crowley would later write that I lived with Paulet as his wife for some 6 months, and he made a poet out of me. Oh, that's how you become a poet. I thought you had to study poetry and just kind of work on your craft. Turns out you just have to be a dude's wife. That is how you need some dick. Dick gives you poetry. I had no idea. Crowley would later reflect on this relationship in his book, The Scented Garden of Abdullah, the Satirist of Shiraz, which was part homoerotic parody, part mystical text. Only 200 copies were ever printed, and most were destroyed upon seizure after being published due to the filth inside, the naughty wickedness, the carnal sins of the flesh. So, if you can find an original of this book, I'm guessing that's worth some coin. The book is full of interesting tidbits, such as... A man can afford to a man 2 pleasures which a woman cannot give him, namely 1. Passive sodomy, pleasure of the pathic. 2. Illumination, pleasure of the fellator. If you're confused, let me break that down for you. This was a very sophisticated way of him saying, look, dude, chick can't do everything a dude can do with the dude, okay? She can't stick her dick in a dude's butt. She can't slap a man wiener in his mouth. Maybe that's oversimplifying it. I love the new words, especially new dirty words. Hail Lucifina. And I can't ever recall coming across a rumination before. It's defined on one medical dictionary site as the active thrusting of a man's penis into or between one or more partner's body parts, including legs, breasts, feet, upper thighs, abdomens, throat, and mouth. Unlike fellatio, in which the fellator is the active stimulator. Man, sounds creative, sounds fun. So many places to thrust your ween. I haven't thought of some of those. So much ruminating to be done. What a great form of birth control, man. Don't have to worry about unexpected pregnancy when you're doing some armpit ruminating. Just what in God's name are you doing to the small of my back? Why, I'm just ruminating it. Really? Well, it feels like you're aggressively thrusting your dick into my spine. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing. It's delightful. Anyway, Aleister and Mr. Paulet break up, as young people often do. due in part to Pollitt's unwillingness to take part in Crowley's growing interest in mysticism. Now, Crowley would occasionally denounce this relationship later in life, but it always comes across as kind of jilted lover talk, kind of sour grapes kind of stuff. Sounds like Pollitt, pulled out just in time, pun intended, because in 1897, Crowley contracted syphilis. He also self-published his first book while in school around this time in Cambridge, Thelema, A Place to Bury Strangers In. It featured a volume of pornographic verses called White Stains. Oh man, classic Crowley. He had to publish it in Amsterdam under the pseudonym George Archibald Bishop, and it was scandalous for Victorian England, containing tawdry verses such as, I will kiss thee and fondle and woo thee, and mingle my lips into thine. That shall tingle and thrill through and through thee as the draught of the flame of wine. I will drink of the fount of our pleasure, licking round and about and above, till its streams pour me out their full measure. O Lucius, love. And it had some sacrilege, some stuff like, hell is the house of all delight, heaven is the home of bitter blight, pain is our joy and our spirit's power, never shall fade its fiery flower. Oh, so much fucking angry emo kid right there. So much goth teen, so much dark trench coat. And then he gets a little naughtier with my favorite, free women cast a lustful eye on my gigantic charms and seek by word and touch with me to lie and vainly proffer cunt and cheek. Ooh, so naughty. Cunt always sounds so much less offensive to me when it's said with an accent, right? Doesn't it? And throwing proffer in front of it, really classing up the cunt there. Also in 1897, Crowley reads Karl von Eckartshausen's The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary, and becomes fascinated with the existence of secret societies, which would lead him to soon seek them out. Eckartshausen, an 18th century German Catholic mystic, presented the mystical thesis that there exists this invisible and interior church, or a society of the elect, and that it exists quite apart from any established church. And Karl believed that this secret society had existed from the very beginning of time, the dawn of man, and was presently alive and well, and would one day openly rule the world. Space lizards, we are coming. I mean, they are coming. Those people, not us. Interesting note, Eckartshausen would join that initial mysterious group, the original Illuminati. He was an OG Illuminati member, man. Pretty dope. That was the original secret group founded by Adam Weishaupt. The Illuminati, man, conspiring to overthrow the church and rebirth the earth under a new world order. And then, the reality is shortly after its creation, the head of Bavaria banned secret societies, members were arrested, blah, blah, blah. It fragmented and went away. Or lives to this day and is under constant investigation via the watchful third eye of David Icke. Well, in May of 1998, Crowley leaves Cambridge, makes a resolution that he will find the hidden church, the secret assembly of chiefs, alluded to by Eckartshausen. Now, that's a red flag for wackadoodles right there, for being a wackadoodle. That's one of the many ways someone has become or is becoming a complete wackadoodle. When they drop out of college to dedicate their life to finding secret societies. Also very trust fund. But yeah, never good. Never makes the parents happy. Emily, how's your son Edward these days? Well, Judith, he goes by Aleister, and he's just dropped out of Trinity College to find a secret society that controls the fate of humanity. How's Charles? Oh, he's a doctor now, and I must be going. I really must be going. Just as he's leaving Cambridge, Crowley joins the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, an organization devoted to the study and practice of the occult, metaphysics, paranormal activities. And these groups were, fairly common. If we talked in some other ones, like the Harry Houdini kind of episode, roughly around this same time frame, where this is when people are doing seances, and they're having all these tarot cards and all the psychics. That stuff is really in vogue now. Now, this particular order is Order of the Golden Dawn. Who are the founders of this order? Freemasons. Of course they were. Space lizards, always pulling the lizard strings from the darkness of the Freemasons. Crowley was allowed in as a neophyte of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He was the evening of November 18th, 1898, at the Mark Mason's Hall in London was when he was indoctrinated. The rites and rituals practiced in this order would go on to influence modern Wicca and Thelema, Aleister's religion. Oh, man, to be a fly on the wall at that place, man. Grown-ups practicing a little magic, wearing some costumes. That sounds like some A+++, like top shelf people watching, like the fucking best. I'm inherently far too skeptical and sarcastic to ever be a member of something like that and take it seriously. Like, I might be able to do like a Freemason rite, I could see like, getting in maybe, but I would potentially be the worst member of, if they get too into the weird like costumes and stuff. Just, Mr. Cummins, could you please stop giggling? We're trying to focus on some necromancy. Sorry, it's a pointy hat. I can't look at you wearing that pointy hat and not laugh. Stop smirking at least. Can you at least put the wand down? There's no way I can look at you wearing a pointy hat and holding a wand at 50 years old and not at least smirk. You gotta give me a smirk. Well, Aleister does not smirk, does not giggle. He loves it. He immediately begins to rise to the outer circle of this order. He's all in. And by the end of the year, he begins to develop an obsession with completing the operation of Abramelin, which involves 6 months of seclusion devoted to an ever-heightening discipline of meditation, prayer, and study. And if you do it right, you can conjure your own guardian angel into this plane of existence. And then once you've conjured this angel, he tells you how to bind or overcome various demons that are keeping you from getting everything you want in life or some shit. Also, once you complete this ritual, believers think you have the ability to master a whole new level of spells now. They cover a diverse range of abilities from like flight, resurrection, shape-shifting, Jesus, divination, access to hidden knowledge. Get the fuck out of here. People actually are studying this stuff thinking, pretty soon I'll be able to shapeshift and fly around the astral project. Man, it's like you're like a level 7 human mage now with neutral alignment, or possibly a necromancer. You have a +7 in religion on your character sheet. You have a +5 in wisdom. So many extra hit points, you guys. So you get a +2 in charisma. You get a +17 in wackadoodle. This shit is just like last week, man. It's, it's like so D&D. In the spring of 1899, Crowley meets Alan Bennett, one of the most esteemed members of the Golden Dawn, at a ritual at Mark Mason's Hall. Bennett and Crowley start experimenting with magic on their own. That's a huge red wackadoodle flag. When you and another dude start doing your own experimenting with magic. How's Aleister these days, Emily? It is still Aleister, isn't it? It is, Judith. He's splendid. He's joined an order of dark magicians after dropping out of university, so we're quite pleased about that. And now he and another magician have set out to practice a little magic on their own. I believe they're working on some kind of necromancy, some kind of shape-shifting spell at the moment. Can I get you some more tea? Oh, I must be leaving again, Emily. You must be terribly proud, though. You must be terribly proud. Bennett introduces Crowley to drug use as part of practicing magic. The explorations undertaken by Bennett and Crowley went beyond the confines of second-order magic to take in the possibilities of alternative consciousness by means of drugs. It just gets more and more like weird trust fundy kid, where it's like, really? Now you're fucking just hanging out, working on your spells, and then you're justifying drug use for your magic. Oh, they're wearing like black robes and shit. Interesting note, the social atmosphere and legal consequences of drug experimentation in that period were very different from our own. There was already a strong kind of 19th century tradition of using drugs as a means to explore the human mind. So that part really wasn't that scandalous, man. It's kind of a weird sign of the times where at that during that era, pornography, extremely taboo in Victorian England. But narcotics, whatever, man. That's just fucking life. Yeah, of course you're taking some laudanum. Of course you're taking some opium. Feels good. Bennett was seriously into drugs. He was in poor health, suffering from asthma, which he treated by first taking opium orally, and then after a week or two, switching up to shooting up morphine. And then he started doing coke, like drink this cocaine, laudanum stuff. And then when that started to cause him to hallucinate, he went on to inhaling chloroform. Oh man, and this was like doctors were prescribing these treatments. I'm no doctor, but that sounds like a horrible way to treat asthma. Yeah, I'm pretty sure no one's asthma has ever gotten better from them doing heroin, so much coke they started to hallucinate, and then sniffing a lot of chloroform. Just like going back in for your checkup later when you don't feel any better. What? Your asthma is way worse. Have you been smoking heroin? You've been smoking. Have you been shooting it up? Have you been putting it in a needle and shooting it into your veins? Huh. And you've been drinking lots of cocaine, enough to hallucinate? And sniffing the chloroform, just really taking deep breaths, filling your lungs with nothing but chloroform, and you still don't feel well. Well, that's peculiar. It's almost as if I have no idea how to treat maladies. It's as if I have no idea how to treat patients for actual diseases. Later in 1899, Crowley gets into a fight with another member of the Golden Dawn, the famed poet William Butler Yeats. Yeats outranks Crowley within the order and doesn't like Crowley, and Yeats helps get Crowley tossed out. Fucking nerd fight. It's a wizard duel, everyone. Get your corners, grab your wands, get ready to recite your spells. Crowley would later claim he got tossed out for criticizing the order or because they were just playing at magic. Right? He didn't think they were taking it seriously enough. That's another huge wackadoodle red flag. When you get kicked out of an order of dark magicians for being angry at them that they're not taking the dark magic serious enough, that's when you know you're a complete weirdo. Like you are an odd human being. January 15th, 1900, Crowley kicked out of the London Order and moves to Paris to study his magic, to further study his magic under the tutelage of another exiled order member, another person who didn't think they were taking it seriously enough, British occultist Samuel Liddell Mathers. I'll take my black magic across the pond, thank you very much. While in Paris, Mathers and Crowley decide that they're going to return to London and they're going to take back the Second Order. I love this. Grab your wands, dark wizards. Let's fight. We must take our order back. I love how seriously these lunatics are taking this nonsense. These grown men are they're preparing over in Paris to go back to London and take over their dark magic order, to fucking reclaim it from the false wizards. Their plan was to return and summon all Second Order members, and over the course of several days have them answer a series of questions in the course of an interview as to which dark leader they would pledge their loyalty to, Yates and his wizards or Mathers. Crowley, as the questioner, would wear a mask of Osiris. Oh, Jesus. To emphasize the impersonality of his role. This is very like Eyes Wide Shut now. As Mathers' emissary and judge, the loyalty test would culminate in the signing of a statement avowing Mathers as the unquestioned leader. Any member refusing to sign would be expelled from the order. These plans formulated, Crowley departed from Paris on April 13th, and the Wizard Inquisition raged. It raged for 3 days and nights. While Crowley quizzed the magicians in London, Mayers, I think I keep saying Mathers. My mind puts that T in there. Mayers aided from afar with his sorcery. I'm not even kidding. He baptized dry peas, giving each of them the name of one of his opponents, and then he invoked the devils Beelzebub and Typhon Set, while simultaneously shaking the peas in a large sieve to create quarrels and discord among his enemies. Do you hear what I'm saying? This dude is in like some Paris apartment, and he's wearing like a robe, and he's been doing incantations, and he has a sieve of peas that he's shaking around, and he's angry, and he's just imagining all these arguments breaking out because of the fucking peas. This is bananas. Just shaking dry peas, calling out for some demon to torment other grown-ups who won't play magic the way he wants to. I'll show them. They'll rue the day they cross Samuel Liddell Mathers. Wait until I get these peas rolled out just right. They have yet to feel my pea wrath. Well, this little battle fails to accomplish much of anything. Of course it doesn't, other than just kind of fracturing their little order, and most members just give up on it in the next year or so. They're just like, fucking, no, this is too much. This is too much weird bullshit. And they go back to their lives, and they move on to other silly little black magic clubs. And Crowley himself moves on. On July 6, 1900, he takes off for the States. He's still associated with Mayors. Mathers, god dang it. Sorry, I had written down wrong that one time. I believe it is Mathers now. On July 6th, he's not a seriously important person to the story. I hope this doesn't ruin it for anybody. Is it Mayors or Mathers? It is Mathers. It is Mathers. I had it written down wrong one time. Sorry, I get so hung up on stuff like that. Anyway, July 6th, Crowley lands in New York Harbor, wanders through the U.S. and Mexico, practicing magic, working on his spells. He attempts to start some new magical orders. According to one source, his growing sense of independence showed itself also in the founding of a new magical society. According to Crowley, Mathers had bestowed upon him a certain amount of latitude to initiate into the Golden Dawn suitable new candidates whom he might encounter on his travels. And again, how seriously they take this. Now, yes, you can, within reason, you can bring new members into the fold. I trust you. Of course, after the first few members are brought in, I will have to meet them myself and make sure that you've properly screened them. We can't just let anyone in our little magic club, even though there's just you and I at the moment. So this latitude is expanded by Crowley into the creation of the Lamp of the Invisible Light, which appears to have had at most 2 members. So this is one of his accomplishments early on, is he gets a group, he comes up with a whole name and and a fucking code, and it's just him and some other dude. It's just 2 of them. Just Crowley's one member, and some other dude is another one. Some Don Jesus Medina. in Mexico, who Crowley grandly describes as a descendant of the great Duke of Armada fame and one of the highest chiefs of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. He initiates this elder into the the lamp of the invisible light, his club of two, and then in turn he receives an accelerated Masonic initiation to the 33rd degree, the highest degree of the Scottish Rite. Sure, he did. He's just fucking making out. He's just a fucking lunatic. He's just wandering around, forming weird little clubs. So many rituals in this episode. So many funny hats and robes to wear. And again, so trust fund. Throughout 1901, 1902, Crowley divides his time between occult practice, writing weird poems, talking about spells and shit, and mountain climbing. And all these poems he's kind of doing, by the way, for the most, he doesn't really make any money on this or loses money. It's all like, like self-published stuff under pseudonym. So it's not like he's really making a living as a poet. He's able to kind of stretch. I assume he got just based on his life. It doesn't go into all his financial details, but in addition to that initial kind of lump sum he was given, that was equivalent to like £500,000, I think he was, also given more money as time went on. Or he just, kind of lived off the kindness of his admirers, which he would do for sure later. So Crowley, in August of 1903, he's invited to stay with his friend Gerald Kelly and his family. He makes it back to England, and they're vacationing in Scotland, and Crowley is reintroduced to Bennett's young sister, Rose Edith, and is immediately attracted to her. On August 11th, Rose shares that she is in trouble for having an affair with the married man. Her family is pressuring her to marry another, this man who she does not care for, and so Crowley offers to kind of, solve this dilemma for her and marry her and let her move in with him, and also allow her to continue her affair with this married man. So, kind of conventions be damned, without telling her family. On August 12th, the next day they elope in the nearby Scottish town of Dingwall, and her family's understandably not pleased. Her father requests Crowley pay a £10,000 dowry, and he refuses. He's not going to fucking give away that not hard-earned trust fund money. Dude clearly loves to defy conventions, which is why a lot of, metal, pioneers and stuff would love him later. It's like he just did shit because he weren't supposed to, it felt like so often. Like, you wonder if he slept with that male poet in college or married this woman here because he was actually attracted to them, or if he was attracted to the taboo they represented. Like, he was attracted to the violation of the existing social moral code, that they represented. Like, super taboo to have a homosexual relationship in Victorian England. Also super taboo to marry a woman days after meeting her without her family's permission, in part so that she could continue to fuck some other married guy. I mean, he clearly loved creating some chaos. And then comes the honeymoon and Crowley's big spiritual epiphany. But first, a word from today's sponsor. Timesuck is brought to us today by Covent Garden's Magic Cauldron. Now, the Magic Cauldron in delightful Covent Gardens in London is a fantastic little magic shop for the whole family. They have hand buzzers, they have smoke bombs for the little ones, magical locking rings, those fun little rings you kind of, they're locked, now they're not locked. For the middle school magician in your family, and for older, more advanced students, the Magic Cauldron has a demonic possession incantations. They have necromancer rituals from the Book of the Dead, astral projection jackets, so you don't freeze out in the fucking parallel dimensions. Lots of silk scarves to continually be pulled from top hats, which they also sell. To get 50% off your next order, go to www.gettheffuckoutahere.magic.didanyonefallforthat. Son of a bitch. No, there's no sponsors today. I just wanted to do that. Shortly after their shotgun wedding. Oh man, I hope some of you made it to necromancer ritual before you're like, what the fuck? Shortly after their shotgun wedding, Aleister and Rose leave to have a honeymoon in Cairo. That must be nice, man, getting a honeymoon in Egypt. Aleister would later call the honeymoon a period of uninterrupted debauchery. Now that is a good honeymoon. That's how you do a honeymoon right. Uninterrupted debauchery. Poor Rose, though, and I can only imagine where and how often she was penetrated by the great beast Lovehammer. He's probably, as you were talking earlier, he's probably put in her armpit and back of her knee, and he must have snuck it into her vagina at least one time, because she does get pregnant. And 16 months later, she gives birth to Lucifina, yes, a fully grown temptress after a long gestation period with fishnet stockings. Right out the womb, fishnet stockings, a garter, full perky breast that would vary between a B and D cup depending on mood and the moon cycle. Unimaginable beauty. The demon immediately kills her mother and takes her place as Aleister's wife. It's so fucked up. No, that never happened. Not even in pretend land that happened. Right? I've grown very fond of Lucifina, despite her occasional meddling and suck. Anything that goes wrong, still her fault. But I don't want her mythology to include messing around with nasty-ass Crowley. He skeeves me out. No, thank you. Rose does get pregnant, perhaps impregnated inside an actual pyramid. They spent the night in the Vikings' chamber in the Great Pyramid. Jesus, man. Guessing the visitation policy was way more relaxed back then. How cool would that be? To stay a night, by the way, in a pyramid. Aleister said he arranged to stay so he could work on his magic inside the powerful resonator that is the Great Pyramid. Hail Nimrod! And he wanted his wife to see what a great magician he was. Oh, God. This was a turning point for Crowley. Rose, in a dream state within the chamber, kept repeating, "They are waiting for you." When asked who she said was waiting, she said Horus, an Egyptian god. Now, apparently she supposedly knew nothing of the occult, nothing of Egyptology. After this wild night, Crowley took her to an Egyptian museum to test her knowledge of Egyptology, and she ran through the museum until she found the statue of this Horus, and then, cried, "This is him!" Now, adding a dark twist to the encounter, the statue of Horus was Exhibit 666. Dun, dun, dun. Now, I think it's important to keep in mind that Crowley was doing a shitload of drugs around this time, and in all likelihood, so was Rose. So God knows how much cocaine or opium also made it into that chamber. How much fucking formaldehyde they were huffing. On April 8, 1904, in a hotel in Cairo, the Great Beast had another encounter with the supernatural. Or so he would later claim. Crowley hears a voice over his shoulder. It's not a human voice. Over the next 3 days, this voice will appear at noon each day and dictate to Crowley. And that voice was Iwis, emissary of Horus. And each day he would whisper into Crowley's ear, "Clean your taint. It is filthy. You mostly remember to wash your bowls and frequently and vigorously wash your butthole. If anything, you're washing your butthole too often and too vigorously. But you often forget your taint, and it is filthy." And from that experience forward, Crowley would have the cleanest taint in human history. It would become a great honor, actually, to have Crowley press his squeaky clean taint, literally squeaky clean, against your face. That's how you knew he cared for you. Sometimes he would also let you eat off his unearthly divine cleanliness of a taint. No. That was nonsense, but it wasn't nonsense that he thought he heard this demon thing whispering to him every day, and apparently it was, Iwis, which is kind of, and Iwis was giving him messages from Horus, which is kind of weird, right? That like one demon thing or Egypt god has to give you messages from another one, like why can't? What's he doing? What's he so busy doing that he can't come talk to Aleister? Is this Horus? No, Horus is unable to make it at all this time. He's haunting a different pyramid today, or maybe at the Sphinx. It is I, the less impressive but still pretty cool Iwis, and I'm here to give you a message from Horus. He told me to talk to you. Supposedly this Iwis gave Crowley the text of the Book of the Law, named him prophet. Sure he did. Sure he did David Koresh. I mean Marshall Applewhite. I mean Jim Jones. I mean L. Ron Hubbard. I mean Aleister Crowley, you delusional son of a bitch. This text would become the foundation for Thelema, Aleister's new spiritual philosophy or religion. The most important line of the text Crowley received and the mantra that would be the basis for all that Crowley would later do is, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." Now to the events in Cairo, Crowley dubs himself Chiwakan, Hebrew for Great Beast. And Rose is now Audra the Seer. Rose is a scarlet woman. The first Scarlet Woman, so he's getting way into his new mythology. On July 28th, 1904, Rose gives birth to their daughter, and Crowley goes out of his fucking way to give her the most preposterously shitty name any parent has given a child. He names her, I'm not making this up, Nuit, Ma, Ahathor, Hecate, Sappho, Jezebel, Lilith. That's her name. That's her first name. Right? That's not even counting the Crowley part. Seriously, guessing they just called her Lily for short. I hope so. Jesus. Anyone who names their kid some fucking bullshit like that, they deserve, honestly, to have their kid taken away from them. You're not even joking. You are not ready to be a parent when you do that. And you make another human being carry the burden of your wackadoodle agenda with their name. Ugh. Crowley later explained her name. He would say, Nuit was given in honor to Our Lady of the Stars. Ma, goddess of justice, because the sign of Libra was rising. Hathor, goddess of love and beauty, became Venus rules Libra, because Venus rules Libra. I'm not sure about the name Hecate. I love one of it is just random. It's Hecate or Hecate. Hecate. Fuck, it's nonsense is what it is. But I love how he says, I'm not sure about the name Hecate. It may have been a compliment to the infernal gods. A poet could hardly do less than commemorate the only lady who ever wrote poetry, Sappho. Jezebel still held her place as my favorite character in scripture, and Lilith, of course, holds undisputed possession of my affections in the realm of demons. That is the most wackadoodle rationale for a name. I love that in the middle of all this symbolism, there's one of the names he just like, that's a good question. Right? We were doing a lot of opium. I was very high, and I don't remember all the reasoning. Around the birth of the child, Aleister's marriage begins to fall apart. Maybe they argued a bunch over that kid's name. I wanted to name her Sarah. What's wrong with Sarah? It's a beautiful name. What's wrong with Nuitma, Athul, Heket, Sappho, Jezebel, Lilith? Fucking everything. Fuckface would have been a better name than that. Domestic life did not suit Crowley, so in April 1905, Crowley takes off for some more mountain climbing. He'd been doing off and on ever since he got that, trust fund. He decided to join an expedition with the members of the K2 team to climb Kachinjunga, a towering peak of some 28,207 feet, third highest mountain in the world. No Western climbers had ever ventured. For like 40 years, he would have, the record, be part of the team that had the record for the highest climb. So, he was, at least with good company doing his climbing. This climb though doesn't go well. He gets in a fight with his team, has to make himself a separate little camp. I'm guessing the argument started when he told him what his daughter's name was, and they called him an asshole, and it probably went downhill from there. No, but then on September 1st, 1905, an avalanche occurs, and Crowley's handling of the aftermath causes him to kind of basically lose a lot of respect in the mountaineering circles and kind of be shunned. Back to the shunning. The rest of his party was descending when an avalanche struck. 4 of the group died. The survivors would later claim that Crowley was nearby in an unaffected tent when the avalanche hit, and that he ignored their cries for help, choosing instead to drink his tea. I don't know. Maybe he cast a spell to make it happen. Maybe he's probably dicking around with some dried peas in his tent, rolling them around in a bowl of spider legs and some eye of newt, some bat wool in his tent cauldron. I'll teach you to not be nice to me, the dark wizard. October 29th, 1905, after the disastrous climb, Crowley heads to Calcutta. Rose is to meet him there. They had not seen each other in 6 months, and she just wanted to catch up with him and just present him in person. Is 1905 International Father of the Year trophy. The young family leaves from India to travel to China, and Crowley again quickly tires of domestic life. Less than 6 months later, on March 22nd, 1906, Rose and Crowley part company. Crowley heads back to England by the Pacific route to Japan, then to Canada, and then after crossing of the entire North American continent, at last to sail for England from New York. Rose was to proceed by way of India to pick up the remaining luggage, and then through the Suez Canal and the Mediterranean. The rationale later offered by Crowley for this decision, and this is all according to later biography author Lawrence Sutton, was his intention to drum up support in New York for a Kachinjunga expedition, which he would attempt vainly to accomplish. It's like a new expedition. Well, he arrives in Liverpool on June 2nd, 1906, and learns via letter that his daughter Nuit has died of typhoid in Rangoon. And he blames Rose, claiming that the cause was an improperly sanitized bottle nipple due to Rose's drunkenness. I wonder if she just finally realized what her name was and just passed away of sadness. Rose is pregnant again when young Nuit dies, gives birth to daughter Lola Zaza in 1907. Lola would live a long life, reaching the age of 83, with a regular, not too fucked up name, coincidence. By 1907, there's no longer even an illusion of a monogamous marriage between Aleister and Rose is drinking heavily, and Crowley is unsympathetic. By 1911, she would actually end up being committed to an asylum for alcohol-induced dementia. And after many years of dementia and just kind of toiling in asylums, she would die in 1932. By 1908, Aleister has moved out of their shared Scotland apartment, and their marriage completely has fallen apart. He's also begun to spread the gospel of Thelema, which is very similar to the Golden Dawn, with some kind of new stuff, some new twists and turns thrown in. It's built off the back of the Golden Dawn kind of rites. In November of 1907, he'd founded the A, followed by 3 periods in a triangle, the logical and mathematical symbol for therefore. Another A followed again by this symbol, like A, therefore, so this AA, and since most people, myself included, don't immediately recognize what a therefore symbol means, and just read it as AA, which I guess is how you say it. It comes across looking just like Alcoholics Anonymous, and I just bring that up because it's led to some hilarious conspiracy theory videos on YouTube, where thousands of people believe, and you can tell by their comments, that Alcoholics Anonymous was founded by Aleister Crowley and is inherently a satanic organization, which is complete and utter nonsense. But there's this, association because of Aleister Crowley having an organization, around the same time AA was founded, roughly, that had these same initials. What do the A's stand for with Crowley's organization? Well, there's a lot of disagreement over that, since from what I can tell, Aleister never completely spelled it out just explicitly. The Latin name of Crowley's previous magical order, the Golden Dawn, Aurea, also featured the initials AA, probably not a coincidence. Argentium Astrum. I'm not good with Latin, but that's Latin for the silver star. And most past believers have felt, and I guess most current believers felt, this is the true name of the religion, like the silver star, it gets called a lot of times. And there's a bunch of other conjecture out there about other possibilities. Well, whatever the fuck it stands for, Crowley begins to spread it. He starts to gather disciples. He meets Victor Newberg in the spring of 1908. Newberg is 7 years Crowley's junior. Crowley's later description of him is fantastic. He described this guy as, he was agnostic, vegetarian, a mystic, a Tolstoyan, and several other things all at once. He endeavored to express his spiritual state by wearing the green star of Esperanto. Though he could not speak the language by refusing to wear a hat, even in London, to wash and to wear trousers. Whenever addressed, he wriggled convulsively in his lips, which were 3 times too large for him, and had been put on hastily as an afterthought, emitted the most extraordinary laugh that had ever come my way. To these advantages he united those of being extraordinarily well-read, overflowing with exquisitely subtle humor, and being one of the best-natured people that ever trod this planet. I love that his physical description makes me think of like a young Mick Jagger. Well, Crowley initiated this Newberg into his magical order, the AA, and he took the magical name Frater Omnia Vincum. And I'm sure he took that very seriously. From this moment forward, you are Frater Omnia Vincum. That is your magic name. Crowley also began a long-lasting sentimental and sexual relationship with Newberg in 1909. Crowley took Newberg to Algiers in Africa, and they set off in the desert, where they performed some super weird shit. They performed a series of occult rituals based on this Enochian system of the 16th century British occultist Dr. John Dee. You know, these rituals to like bring forth spirits into this plane. In the midst of these rituals, Crowley put the ideas of sex and magic together, performed his first sex magic, and it'd be like magic with like a K on there, ritual, which would actually bring forth the Red Hot Chili Peppers from one plane, a plane of white boy Southern California funk, into this one, into ours. Blood, sugar, sex, magic. Actually worth noting that the Chili Peppers did spell magic with a K in that album and on that song, just like Crowley did. Another pop culture nod to the hedonist. So no, of course they did not conjure a band. They did try to fuck up some magic, literally. Crowley would come to believe, as he literally came in the desert with Newberg, there was sodomy going on out in the desert, and I hope they used lube. Anal sex in the desert sounds like a nightmare. A lot of sand. As he would later state in the Book of Law, he would state that each individual has an absolute right to satisfy his sexual instinct as is physiologically proper for him. The one injunction is to treat all such acts as sacraments. One should not eat as the brutes, but in order to enable one to do one's will. The same applies to sex. We must use every faculty to further the one object of our existence. Well, so what he did out there is, well, he would come and then come to believe that sexual energy is a potent force that can be harnessed to transcend one's normally perceived reality. One example of the practice of sex magic is using the sexual energy of orgasm with visualization to achieve a desired result. And so, but he has this like epiphany, like while he's having Newberg sodomize him in the desert while they're doing their little incantations and stuff. Like it was like part of this ritual, this deviation of this ritual, you know, that he had come up with, which really all just sounds like rationale for just doing kind of unlimited fucking. You know, he would go on to make like sex magic rituals that involved oral intercourse, vaginal intercourse, anal intercourse, just everything. Just, you know, just using some good old mumbo jumbo magic talk to justify a lot of putting your dick in places. Or maybe he really did think it gave him power. In Algiers, he and Newberg, this whole episode is so preposterous. He and Newberg did try to fuck the demon Choronzon, the dweller of the abyss, into existence, or Coranzon, or who gives a shit. But no, he believed this demon to be the main obstacle between humanity and true enlightenment. These knuckleheads they're out there in the desert having sex in order to, in their minds, open the gates of hell. And again, how much opium went into that? And yeah, and to do this, for this particular ritual, Crowley has Newberg sodomize him. And at the point of climax, Crowley has this mystic revelation where he sees a bright white light and realizes that sex itself is a sacrament. It's a shortcut to magic. And this ritual ignited, you know, Crowley and firmly believing that sex and magic were linked, and then you'll see where this leads. So, 1912, Crowley finds a new muse for his sex magic. He was never one to have a partner very long, or necessarily to stick to one sex. Leela Waddell, one of his books, the Book of Lies, is very much inspired by her. Not sure how flattering that title is. I don't know. Baby, I have dedicated a new book to you. That's wonderful, darling. And what is it called, Aleister? The Book of Lies, you harlot. Crowley spends the next few years working on sex magic, developing Thelema further. I bet he does. Sounds like a good time. As Thelema research sounds a hell of a lot more exciting than Timesuck research, I'll tell you that. In January of 1914, Crowley decides to undertake another major ritual. It would be a 6-week ritual. It's a long time for a ritual. That would be called the Paris Working Ritual. Paris sounds like a way better place to do some sex magic than the African desert. And the purpose of the Paris Working Ritual was to summon the Roman gods Mercury and Jupiter into our plane. That sounds legit, not at all wackadoodle. Just kind of reach out to a few Roman gods, no big whoop, and I thought last Suck's Norse mythology was weird. And the ritual takes place in this Paris apartment Crowley in Newburgh share, and it attracted some interesting guests. New York Times foreign correspondent Walter Durante, another of Aleister's lovers, he participated. And the first experiment is done on New Year's Eve with Durante, and Crowley receives sacrament from Durante in the form of his semen. Yep, you heard right. Exactly how and where he received this sacrament, it has not been recorded. Hopefully not in his eye. That's rude. And then that night, shit gets so cray-cray. Newburgh does some type of dance. His movements representing a pentagram, done to purify the room. While he dances, and I assume he's dancing naked, Crowley scourges him on his buttocks. So, he's getting spanked with some little spanking device. Probably some little leather strap or something as he does his little pentagram dance. And then Crowley takes a dagger, cuts a cross on Newburgh's chest, and he wraps a chain around Newburgh's head. So much drugs had to have been present. No way these idiots were sober for this insanity. And then when the clock strikes midnight, of course, Crowley and Newburgh engage in ritual sex. And then Newburgh is fucking Crowley while they're both reciting a Latin verse composed by Durante and Crowley just for this occasion, which translates to "Magician is with magician joined. Hermes, king of want, appear, bringing the ineffable word." Do you understand how crazy this is? They're chanting that phrase over and over in Latin while having the sodomy. I'm sure there's witnesses chanting it as well. And then according to the outrageous wackadoodles present at the event, Mercury manifested in Newburgh, whom Crowley saw surrounded by a dazzling astral array. The temple grew flashing, full of flashing caduceae, the magical wand with intertwined serpents, sacred to Mercury, of gold and yellow. Oh, good drugs, man. The serpents alive and moving, Hermes bearing them, but so young and mischievous was he that the sacrifice was impossible. Well, apparently this last sentence referred to Newburgh fucking up bringing Mercury fully into our realm by not maintaining an erection long enough to complete the ritual. I'm not kidding. That's not one of my lies. They're that ridiculous. Like they do all this stuff, they prepare for it, this very long ritual, just weeks ending with this, and then, Mercury doesn't show up, and they're like, well, of course, if he didn't show up, you came too fast. God damn it, man. Why couldn't you have just pinched your nuts a little bit towards the end? Slapped the tip of your dick for a second to slow things down. You just nutted away our entire ritual. Well, this is how seriously they took this. Crowley was so disappointed in Newburgh, his ill-timed orgasm, that they actually parted ways after this ritual. It ended their relationship. For Crowley, the object of this ritual was not limited to just some mystical union with some goddess or god. He thought they could actually invoke some sort of magical child, as he would later, come to call it. And this magical child could be like, some concentrated form of inspiration. It could manifest physically as a talisman, or even as a human being, or as in a newborn baby. That'd be quite the party trick, to butt fuck a newborn baby into existence. You can do that. Ooh, you got some powers, my friend. Oh man, I don't want to be around that baby. Well, I don't know what that butt baby's gonna get up to in his life, but probably nothing good. Hey, looky here, now, I got some pig. This is pig. Ever did lick. Maybe that's how Piney started from a demonic butt baby ritual, but it doesn't happen. This doesn't happen, because of Newburgh's too easily excited ween. He gets a little bit of spanking, a little bit of chanting, a little bit of sodomy, and he's spraying like a garden sprinkler, man. Amateur. What an amateur move. So then he takes off, and he has a fairly normal life after that, away from Crowley. On October 24th, 1914, Crowley heads back to America on the Lusitania, the U.S. passenger vessel, the sinking of which in 1916 by a German submarine would precipitate America's entry into the war. He's still exploring sex magic. He records this time in his diary. He notes that from September 1st, 1914 to June 16th, 1915, there were 68 operations, which was his term for sex magic experiences, and that 11 of these were solo masturbations. So, 11 times he wasn't able to trick someone into one of his weird sex games, and he would just jerk off instead. Man, masturbation magic. That's pretty sweet. That sounds like an easy trick to pull off. Maybe I'm going to do that. Maybe I'll do that later today, out on the road in my hotel room. How would the other hotel guests like that? Just to hear me, jerking off, just yelling stuff like "a la peanut butter sandwich." And maybe right as I come, I'll just, by the power of Grayskull. What are you doing in there? Sex magic. Get away from me. In January of 1915, Crowley meets George Sylvester Viereck, a writer that Crowley would interact with throughout the war years. Viereck would later be remembered as the most influential propagandist for the German cause in America during both World War I and World War II. So, birds of a feather flock together. He was attracting a real swell crowd. By the way, there will be a lot of speculation about this later. Some people would think that he was just being a dick, trying to support Germany just because it was, again, he just liked stirring up the pot. There was other speculation, never completely verified, that he may have been some secret agent for Britain and actually trying to spread propaganda to make the propaganda seem so dumb that it kind of weakened the German cause. So maybe he was working with the British government, maybe just being a dick. The public assumed he was just being a dick when this would, come out in the press. In June, Crowley falls in love with a New York fashion model named Jeannie, or Jeanne. It doesn't say. However she chose to pronounce it. I'm going to say, let's just say Jeannie. Jeannie Robert Foster. Foster was the model used for the illustrations of artist Harrison Fisher. She was named the Harrison Fisher Girl in 1903. All these illustrations, would go out about her. Jeannie would be one of the great loves of Crowley's life and another Scarlet Woman. Crowley begins practicing Samasati meditation around this time and has a revelation that to become a magus and bring the word of Thelema into the flesh, he must have a magic child. He just keeps getting weirder. He chooses Foster to be his new Scarlet Woman to bear this child. The undertaking would be magic of the highest order, the mystical union of the sexes, Crowley composed. Luckily for Jeannie, it doesn't happen, and she goes on to become a poet of some renown and get away from him. In 1916, Crowley starts an affair with an Indian musician, Ratan Devi, who she becomes pregnant within a month of meeting him. Now he can have his magic baby. Well, nope. Her husband finds out, and he's not happy. And then takes her away from him, takes her to sail back across the pond to England. However, Crowley performs a sex magic ritual to ensure a safe pregnancy, because that's what you got to do. We got to have some more sex to make sure that you make it. And then she gets sick on the voyage and has a miscarriage, and so no magic baby. Doesn't get to have his magic baby. During the summer of 1916, Crowley ups the amounts of drug usage he's doing, tied to his magic rituals. Finally, he starts thinking straight. Man, that's what he's been missing. Man, that's why he wasn't able to get mercury. That's the real reason. It wasn't about his buddy's wean. They just didn't have enough coke in their system. Didn't have enough opium. He starts using heroin for solitary sex operations, which is one hell of a way to rationalize shooting up heroin while you're jerking off. He's doing a lot of coke, too. Got to get more coke into those rituals. His drug of choice was a relatively recent discovery, ether or ethyl oxide, pungent anesthetic liquid, the vapors from which he would inhale from a bottle with a long, thin neck. Sounds fancy. Huffing up that ethyl oxide, man. Huffing up a little ether. That's what the magic was missing, man. You got to put a little bit of that pep on it. A little bit of that ether pep. Guy was a fucking maniac. New York of 1918, Crowley meets Leah Hersig. Her sister Alma brought her to Crowley's apartment. Alma was already an occultist. Leah had an interest. Leah was a 35-year-old single mother to a son named Hansi, who Crowley would call Dionysius. That's not weird, referring to a young boy as the Greek god of wine and madness. That's not weird at all. When they met, she was a public school teacher in the Bronx, attending law lectures at NYU. And then she met Crowley, and everything fell apart. At the time, Crowley met Hersig. He was attempting to create visual art in his apartment. He had just taken out an ad in a New York newspaper that read, all caps to begin, wanted dwarfs. And then it goes to regular lowercase, hunchbacks, tattooed women, Harrison Fisher girls, freaks of all sorts, colored women, only if exceptionally ugly or deformed, to pose for artists. I swear to God, that's what he read. This guy really just marched to the beat of his own drummer, didn't he? I feel like he would have loved the skin art of Ed Gein. Oh, man, he would have loved it. I don't know how much Ed Gein would have loved him. I think he would have loved Ed Gein. Hersig fit none of these descriptions. She was white and attractive, but she showed up, and she would become the first woman to pose for him completely nude. And then after he finishes his piece, his art, he consecrated her as the Scarlet Woman. World War I's going on during all of this. Crowley, and again, there's those rumors that he apparently offered himself to British intelligence as a spy. Kind of the main one is that he was rejected when he offered himself, and he takes that personally, and then that's when he becomes a dick and supports the propaganda on behalf of the Germans. And then there's the other side, which I mentioned earlier. December of 1918, Crowley returns to London, leaving behind a pregnant Hersig. A physician prescribes him heroin for his asthma. It's probably going to just, again, we talked about that. What a great treatment. He moves from there to Paris. An 8-month pregnant Hersig joins him. 2-year-old Hansi joins him. On the boat to Paris, they meet Ninette Shumway, a single mother of a 3-year-old boy. And she comes along to become a nanny for Herzig and Crowley. By February of 1919, Shunway is also a magic lover and is given the name of Sister Cypress. And Herzig remains the primary Scarlet Woman, and she's, I guess, like the backup Scarlet Woman. On February 20th, 1919, they got a little trifecta going on. Herzig gives birth to a daughter named Anne Leon, nicknamed Poupée, which is French for doll. Poupée. And in March of 1919, Crowley seeks a place to build a church for Thelema, a temple. He consults an oracle. Of course he does. That gives a favorable response to the small Sicilian town of Cefalù. Crowley arrives on April 1st with Herzig and Shumway, and they rent the Villa Santa Barbara and work to remodel it into the Abbey of Thelema. February 1920, both Herzig and Shumway are pregnant. Poupée is in very poor health, and October 14th, Poupée dies. In a hospital in Palermo, it is said Crowley grieved more for Poupée than anyone else in his life. Sorry, I feel like such a monster. It's very sad what I'm reading about. Obviously, like this poor baby died. But when you say like Poupée dies, and it makes it hard to be as sad. Maybe that's the trick to dealing with grief. Just name everybody you love fucking horrific, just weird, silly names. Just Poupée and Peepee Head. And that way, and only refer to them as that, so that it's I've been terrible. Peepee Head is not feeling well, and Poupée is very sick. It takes a little bit of this edge off of it. Anyway. Herzig has a miscarriage 6 days later after Poupée dies, so very, very terrible for her. The loss of these two children in the face of Shumway's healthy pregnancy proves unbearable for Herzig. She becomes convinced that Shumway has been working some black magical current and that's been causing the deaths of the two children, and she talks Crowley into reviewing Shumway's magical diaries for this period, which he does, and he feels that she was right. And then she's shunned. She's banished from the abbey. These fucking lunatics. How seriously they take that stuff. It's so sad that these kids die, but it's like, yeah, what was it? The spells? Was she doing black magic, or was it the crazy amount of drugs you idiots are doing out on Sicily? Well, she's not banished for long. Weeks later, on November 26th, she gives the second Scarlet Woman gives birth to a daughter, and is allowed to return, which is too bad, because this little temple that they're living in is not fit for a baby, as we're going to find out. So much debauchery may have went on there. So much sexual depravity, like an insane level. And we're going to dive right into that right after we take a short break for today's Idiots of the Internet.
Idiots of the Internet.
All right, remember the earlier confusion I referenced between Aleister's AA religion and Alcoholics Anonymous? Well, let's start with the comments underneath the video I watched about that. It says, what you need to know about Alcoholics Anonymous and its true history. Hashtag Killuminati. There we go. Killuminati. And the creator and narrator of this video is a living, just breathing, just shit sandwich of a human being, just a maniac. At one point, when he's making this convoluted argument about how Alcoholics Anonymous is satanic and trying to tie Crowley to it, which is crazy when you consider how much Crowley loved drugs. At one point, he puts a picture on screen of Aleister, and it's been badly photoshopped to kind of show him giving the viewer the double bird, both middle fingers up. I'm sure he phrases it as like that's against God. Anyway, there's some stuff that really cracked me up under this video. User His Helping Heart posts, all caps, "Wow, I am shocked at this. I feel sick to my stomach!" Exclamation points, lowercase. To be honest, I was actually going to go to an AA meeting this morning, but for some reason I changed my mind and I just stayed home and I read my Bible. And then after I finished, I decided to get online and see what God wanted to show me today. And I see this, all caps, exclamation points. What? Exclamation points. Wow. Thanks for the information. I appreciate all that you post. God bless you, brother! Exclamation points. Wow. Helping Heart, you need to spend a few days reading some books other than the Bible because you are dumb as fuck. Oh my God. By all means, keep reading the Bible. Keep reading it, maybe, but just, work some other texts into the rotation, like maybe a critical thinking textbook, critical thinking 101, maybe read an Aleister Crowley bio followed by an AA summary so you can understand for the first time how clearly opposed those philosophies actually are. That is just so sad that this person clearly has a drinking problem. They need help. And instead of getting help, they make up some weird excuse that's, to rationalize it through their faith to stay home, and then read this video, and then now we're never going to go to a meeting that could actually save their life. I know AA is not for everybody. I actually had to go to AA for like court ordered when I had this DUI years ago. Not my finest moment at all. And it was really cool. You could see it really like fucking meant a lot to some of these people. And I've known people who AA has been a huge important piece of their life and has kept them on the road to sobriety. And now this poor lady, this helping heart is just never going to go because this dumb shit has convinced her it's satanic. User Daniel Fristo comments under this post, still drinking? And I'm guessing she's referring to user helping hearts. Yeah, I'm sure still drinking. Oh, man, read more, drink less. You know what? You need to exercise the few brain cells you have left. One more from this comment section. User Jamie A asks, please do more videos on this subject. My husband had a drinking problem and now it goes to AA. We are separated and he keeps hooking up with women there. He is into New Age now and yoga and joined Spartan's Fitness Challenge, which is all about the flesh, not the spirit. I believe in health and exercise, but this is also extreme. He rarely will listen about Jesus anymore and is sinning, but thinks he's okay. He said AA has to come first before me and our kids. He texted me his 9-month sobriety coin. It scared me with the triangle. It scared me. And it says, be true to thyself. Ugh. I don't know how adultery is supposed to stop with these meetings. It just seems to me that this is still all about alcohol, whether drinking or not. After hearing your video, I'll be praying against this deception that Christians are falling into. I have a daughter who just started going too, and now I am worried and will pray for her to be led to a Christian place for her addiction. Thank you so much, and thanks for quickly updating my password for your exclusive videos. May God strengthen you, continue to lead to you. Jamie Archibald. Oh, Jamie, you fucking dumb, sad clown of a lady. He's not working out all the time and hooking up because of the devil. He's just no longer in a relationship with a woman where I'm strongly guessing he was in a sexless marriage. Not that it's Jamie's fault. Could be this dude could be a douchebag as well. I don't want to come across that way. But just this lady seems so sad that she wants her drunk husband back. She'd prefer him not to be drunk, but she'd rather have him be a drunk and doing what she wants than to be doing his Spartan fitness challenges and fucking knocking it out with his AA ladies. Oh, God, I bet their sex life was terrible. Man, stop wasting your time blaming the devil for your broken marriage, right? I don't know much about you, Jamie, but just stop it. I do know that's not the road you're going down. Not going to put anything back together. This is not helping anything at all. Move on with your life, right? Stop blaming, the devil. Definitely stop subscribing to this idiot's private videos. I can only imagine the horrible information he's giving your head with through private videos, as dumb as his public video is. Do some therapy, do some couples counseling if you can talk your husband to that, but fucking come on. Stop, dog. And then really, it'll be the lady trying to talk your separate husband and your daughter out of getting sobriety help. And why are the two of you alcoholics? It sounds like there's a lot going on. This doesn't sound like a good home, happy home you guys had. I also watched a roughly hour-long Crowley documentary. It was called Satanist, Aleister Crowley, the most wicked man in the world. And pretty interesting documentary, man. Narrated by the great Scottish actor Brian Cox. I love that dude. Love his voice, man. That's the guy, older guy. He's been everything from Super Troopers to Troy. A lot of comedies, too. Played Churchill in the 2017 film with the same name. And user Rick Sanchez takes an odd stance in the comments sections, saying, came for the baseless allegations, wild misrepresentations, and outright lies about Crowley and his work, leaving totally satisfied. Right, because Crowley wasn't an eccentric sexual deviant, you moron. And as if he didn't want that image out there. That's a weird thing about some of the Crowley defenders you find in these comment sections. And there's gold in these threads. Where it's like, he loved it. He loved being reviled. He loved repulsing people. If anything, the documentary I watched, which didn't say anything, if anything, it said less stuff than some of the stuff in the books. He would have enjoyed it, or wanted, them to just make his image harsher. They wanted to, make up outlandish tales of him doing more stuff that was more outwardly evil. User XDMBX seems to miss a lot of the documentary. He posts, you say sex addict like it's a bad thing. Creating life really isn't a bad thing. Well, that's two different thoughts, you dumb shit. All right, being a sex addict isn't just having a normal sexual life. Those are two different things. Sex is not a bad thing. Not at all. Creating life, not a bad thing. How our species stays around. Cutting a cross on some dude's chest and having him fuck you, so you could bring a Roman god demon baby into the world, is at least not good. It's at least not good, if not, I would say kind of bad. At the very least, it's questionable, and it's definitely not creating life. So what the hell are you talking about? User Jeffrey posts lies, and even more lies. Just another video of Christian religious propaganda bullshit to instill fear in people from discovering the truth of each individual potentiality, to prevent people from actually experiencing the true reality, true spirituality, true nature, and which exists so deeply within and without, and yet so mysteriously that even those among us whom are awakened still cannot grasp the complexity of beauty within our world. Much love to all those who have the courage to march forward and create their own lives in whatever way they desire it manifests. Many blessings. I love when people project their meanings onto things that don't share that meaning. Right, like this person, doesn't sound like a bad person. He's a little angry about Christianity, and religion, but he's got his, what sounds like some kind of positive spirituality for himself. But then he chooses to have Aleister Crowley represent this positive spirituality and be this great bastion of individuality. No, dude, he was also a fucking just kind of degenerate asshole. Just somebody who was a fucking terrible father, a terrible husband, just this trust fund douchebag who plays his fucking magic games and, uses it to justify his sexual obsession. That's not like some free love kind of hippie person that you're making him out to be here. It's like when he was used in the counterculture revolutions of the 60s, everyone, went to Crowley and, like this great example of kind of standing up to the man and standing up to this Christian patriarchal society we live in, this oppressive society. And it's like, okay, in an overly suppressive religious kind of patriarchy, I don't think that's good, but that doesn't mean that the opposite is good. People do that weird thing in their heads all the time where they're like, well, I don't like this at all. And so then they go to somebody who's the opposite of that and they're like, that's what I like, without thinking that this opposite thing may be just as fucking ridiculous as what they don't like. It's just another extreme, equally horrific in its own way, or worse. It's like, dude, man, that post would be, meaningful and insightful if Aleister's philosophy had brought any good into the world. But, it didn't, unless you count a bunch of, kick-ass future heavy metal riffs, which I don't. Those guys would have kicked ass without Crowley. They didn't need him. He'd go on to die. He's kind of a washed up, loser. Blew his trust fund money, fucking climbing around mountains and fucking people in the desert. Oh man, and if we're about to find out in this suck, he also would openly do hard drugs. And in front of children and just have these weird sex magic rituals in front of kids, and he was just so angry. He wanted to bring down society and bring these malevolent spirits into the world, all because of why, or why? Because God took his daddy too soon? I mean, fuck Aleister Crowley. He's interesting to read about for sure, but he was hardly a role model. Okay, one more. User Religion is Cancer. That's an aggressive title. Post, anyone who can piss off a Christian just by existing, he must have been a good person. And again, this is what I was just talking about, this polarizing idiot speak. And I'm so sick of it right now. I'm sensitive to it because it reminds me of the current political climate of our country. This whole Democrats versus Republicans, just bullshit, And maybe that's easy for me to say because I'm, in the middle as more of an independent libertarian. But it makes me sick, man. All this simple black and white thinking going on. Fuck you and your beliefs. No one listens to anyone on the other side. They just automatically hate the other side for just being the other side, right? This stupid black and white thinking of what anyone who can just piss off a Christian by existing is good. No, how does that make them good? Some people who can piss off Christians can be good. My favorite comic, George Carlin, I think he was great. And he pissed off a lot of Christians, with his pro-abortion and selective kind of pro-suicide rantings. His general disdain of, life and humanity. He also brought me a lot of laughs. Still does, a lot of philosophical insights. He wasn't just, having orgies in front of kids. Bringing actual animals into orgies, which apparently may have happened. Trying to bring monsters into our plane of existence, which I do think is impossible, by the way. But do what thou wilt. That whole philosophy of Crowley. Do what thou wilt, as long as it doesn't directly hurt others. As long as there isn't violence behind it. That's a message I can get behind. But that's not what Crowley preached. Right? He wasn't a good person. I get that he's, seen as this great champion of individualism. He gets points for, not becoming a slave to the rigid morality of Victorian England. But come on, man, he took shit too far. The other direction. The religion of Thelema, calls for shaking free of the shackles of care for the feeling of others. That's a quote. In favor of engagement in, quote, blasphemy, murder, rape, revolution, anything, bad or good, but strong. That is just fucking juvenile and dumb. Right? That's a Crowley quote from the Sword of Song. Like, really? Evocation of rape as long as... Oh, Jesus Christ. Crowley was an anarchist at heart, which sounds cool when you're young and angry, man. I remember love and anarchy. I still have some anarchist tendencies from time to time. You know, I get the appeal of that whole fuck the man kind of vibe. Totally get it. But if you carry those kind of anarchistic thoughts to their logical conclusions, if you really actually carry them out in your head, it doesn't end well. Like, do you really, truly want wanton rape, looting, and murder? That's what you want your life to be full of? You know, you want to be surrounded by? Do you really want that much anarchy? Truly? No joke at all? Not even joking a little bit? Well, you know what? If you do, congratulations. You are also an idiot of the internet.
Idiots of the internet.
All right, back into this timeline. Back in it. If you think I'm being too hard on Crowley, you won't in a second, I hope. Let's head back to 1921. Explore what went on in that little Sicilian abbey, that is a temple of Thelema. In 1921, Leah Hersig writes in her diary, I dedicate myself wholly to the great work. I will work for wickedness. I will kill my heart. I will be shameless before all men. I will freely prostitute my body to all creatures. All creatures, not just men, not just women, all creatures. Crowley described his experiences at the abbey as perfectly happy, my idea of heaven. Crowley and his followers wore robes, performed rituals to the sun god Ra, set, at times during the day, occasionally performing, Gnostic mass, all these mystic rituals, during the rest of the day they were left to follow their own interests, and that part's all well and good. But then Crowley offered a libertine education for kids, allowing them to play all day and also to witness sex magic acts, which is, that's not good. That part's not well and good. Look, not cool. Look, I don't think sex should be viewed as shameful or presented to children as being a shameful act at all. I hate that, actually. But I also don't think you should prematurely sexualize children by fucking in front of them. Get out of here. All right? They also don't need to be living in an opium orgy den. Crowley would travel to Palermo to buy supplies, including drugs, which included heroin. His heroin addiction became to dominate his life at the Abbey. Cocaine began to erode his nasal cavity around this time. No one took cleaning too seriously at the Abbey. Wild dogs and cats, fucking feral animals are wandering around. This is a place where kids are. It's filthy. It's getting into like Train Spotting, Requiem of a Dream kind of territory now. New followers continued to arrive at the Abbey, though, tending to be taught by Crowley. Among them was film star Jane Wolfe, who arrived in July 1920. She was initiated into AA, became Crowley's secretary. Another was Cecil Frederick Russell, who often argued with Crowley. He strongly disliked the same-sex magic ritual that, converts were required to perform and then left after a year. That fucking cracks me up. Like that's the one thing he just couldn't take. I'm out, Aleister. No, don't try to change my mind. Look, I'm out of here. Yeah, I had a good time for the most part. You've been a good host, mostly. I like the drugs. I enjoy the orgies. I don't mind the cats wandering around in here. Look, I didn't come here to get fucked in the ass, all right? That's not why I came to Sicily. That part does not sit well with me. And I don't sit well, frankly, after that ritual. So, no thank you, sir. I'm packing my bags in my butthole and I'm getting out of here. More conducive was the Australian Thelemite. Frank Bennett, who also spent several months at the Abbey in February 1922. Crowley returned to Paris for a retreat in an unsuccessful attempt to kick his heroin addiction. He then went to London in search of some funds. He's completely out of his inheritance. Probably has been for a while now. He's trying to raise some money from some admirers, to keep his little party going. He's trying to publish articles in the English Review criticizing the dangerous drug acts of 1920. He writes a novel, Diary of a Drug Fiend, completed in July. On publication, it receives mixed reviews. He really never makes any money. He puts out a lot of content, but doesn't really make a lot of money. But I guess he does get admirers, he makes money. So I guess in a way he does. He was lambasted by the Sunday Express, called for the book's burning, used its influence to prevent further reprints. And that's why a lot of people do like him too, because he was just he wouldn't succumb to authority. And again, I don't think it's right that they were burning his books. I don't think that it's right that he was censored. That I also don't agree with, to be clear in this episode. And I get his appeal that way as somebody who just wouldn't allow himself to be censored. But I also don't think what they wanted to censor was fucking good. I don't think it was good literature. I think it was kind of dumb. But again, I think you should be. I'm a huge proponent of free speech, and whatever fucking dumb shit you want to put out in the world. Well, all right, man. I'll stand behind it out of the sense of freedom. Anyway, the Abbey has a dog named Satan. So that's fun. There were children there, like I said. They run around naked, watching the sex acts. It's magic. Watch as make my penis disappear. Abracadabra. There was a nightmare room in the Abbey, an actual place called a nightmare room, where disciples were given drugs, forced to sit there, look at pornographic paintings that Crowley had made. The idea was that they would concur fear there and be able to overcome it. The sex magic they practiced got more and more extreme, and allegedly, one sex magic ritual involved Leah, his Scarlet Woman, trying to have sex with a goat. They did a little attempted goat sex. Apparently the goat wasn't as into it, and they didn't really make it work, but they were trying to get some goat fucking. And that's really when you know you've gone too far into the occult. When you're down to fuck a goat or are fucking a goat. He did seem to draw the line at least on not fucking kids, so I guess that's good. Unless the goat was a young goat, which technically would make it a kid, which is what you call a young goat. So possibly some kind of kid fucking going there on there. If they really did have sex with a goat, and this is an allegation, it'll always be a he said, she said kind of thing. Always be, not completely substantiated rumors. They didn't film any of the sex magic that we know of. It's just that to me is morally unacceptable, on the grounds that an animal cannot give consent. Right? Like it might like it, like it might really like it, but it might also hate it. You don't know. Probably depends on the sex act, I'm guessing, the animal. Maybe the goat had the time of its life for all I know. I don't know. Write in with your own bestiality thoughts to Bojangles at timesuckpodcast.com. I'm sure that would make for a lively and entertaining update. Bojangles, by the way, just told me that he is very pro bestiality. So who knows? Bojangles is he wears sometimes around the office he wears I love bestiality t-shirt. So there's that. Sometimes he wears a crop top, sometimes a mesh crop top. But even the morally questionable Bojangles does think it's wrong to have sex in front of kids. And then along came Betty May, and Aleister's big boner party goes limp. She takes it crashing into the ground. 1922, a young Thelemite named Raoul Loveday moves to the abbey in Sicily with his wife Betty May. And while Loveday was devoted to Crowley, May detested him, like a smart lady, and detested life at the commune. She later claimed, I'm sure she especially detested the sodomy act she must have had to witness being performed on her husband. I don't like it here. It's dirty. I don't like watching you getting fucked in the ass. She later claimed that Loveday was made to drink the blood of a sacrificed cat, and they were required to cut themselves with razors every time they used the pronoun I, right? They had to get rid of their sense of self. Raoul drank from a local polluted stream and then developed a liver infection that resulted in his death in February of 1923. And to be fair to Crowley, he allegedly told them not to drink the water from the creek. He's like, don't drink that. And then a doctor told them that it was the water that made Raoul sick and then killed him, not the cat blood. But anyway, she's mad. She's not convinced. She returns to London and she tells her story to the press, and they eat it up. The tabloid, the Sunday Express, runs the headline, "New Sinister Relations of Aleister Crowley. Varsity Lad's Death. Enticed to Abbey. Dreadful Ordeal of a Young Wife. Crowley's Plans." The paper runs 6 pieces, published in April and May of 1923. He's headlined The King of Depravity, The Wickedest Man in the World, A Cannibal at Large. I'm sure they exaggerated a lot of these stories, and the stories are picked up by newspapers in North America and throughout Europe, and this is how he really becomes notorious. The international press leads to Mussolini, the dictator, kicking the members of the Abbey out of Italy. Just fucking get out of here. On April 23rd, British journalist John Bull proclaims Crowley a man we'd like to hang. The fascist government of Mussolini learns of Crowley's activities, and that's why they give him this deportation, and without him, the Abbey closes. By the time he's been kicked out of Sicily, his average heroin usage has apparently reached 3 grams per day, which I don't know a lot about heroin, but that seems excessive. 1924, Leah Herzig, who was not kicked out of the Abbey, she finally leaves. She's been trying to keep it going. She joins him in Paris, trying to raise funds for a new Abbey. Doesn't work, and the two part ways. August 1924, Crowley meets Dorothy Olson, who within weeks would replace Herzig as a new Scarlet Woman, guessing she had a little bit more money for him to live off for a while. Conjecture there on my part, but I feel it's probably accurate. By 1925, while living in Tunis, Crowley allegedly starts to physically abuse Olson, shattering the bone surrounding her eye. She writes letters to another disciple detailing the abuse. This in part leads to this disciple, one Norman Mudd, losing faith in Crowley as a prophet. He writes him just one letter that year and has a formal break from him in 1926. That same year, Herzig moves to Switzerland, has a son by one of Crowley's former disciples. Everything's falling apart. She, too, denounces Crowley as a prophet. The band's all busted up. The fucking band leader is broke. He's gone full Scott Weiland. I guess not full. Is not yet. Crowley returns to Paris and goes around to his, and by the way, that was not a suicide reference with Weiland. That was Weiland well before he OD'd. Which I guess, is not really suicide, but well before he OD'd, he was just notoriously a fucking asshole to work with and just, ruined SDP. From what I've heard, from what I've read. Anyway, Crowley returns to Paris and goes around to his former friends and allies trying to gather capital, still trying to raise some money to keep his fucking sex magic party going. He's still practicing sex magic, spends the next 4 years traveling around Europe in poverty with a new scarlet woman named Maria de Miramar, who was from Nicaragua. They'd marry, and then they'd be expelled from France shortly after that. And that part, sounds kind of shitty. He wasn't doing anything illegal in France. It's just the French government, had heard about Italy. They had sent some Secret Service people to kind of watch him, and then he was seen, talking to some kind of lower nobility. They didn't want a scandal to break out in France, and so they were just like, fucking get out of here. Take your drama, get out of the country, and never come back. He's notorious now. No one wants him. By 1930, the broke middle-aged occultist had moved to Berlin, and then soon after arriving there, him and Miramar separate, and then by 1932, he's back in England. January 33, he spies a placard in a bookshop window in London and is attached to a copy of one of his novel Moonchild and declares as a sales enticement that Aleister Crowley's first novel, The Diary of a Drug Fiend, was withdrawn from circulation after an attack in the sensational press, and Crowley takes this as an opportunity to sue for libel. He's desperate for money. He sues on the particular grounds that Drug Fiend had never been removed from circulation. Those sales had certainly suffered, and on the general grounds that the placard implied that his work was indecent. Well, the one-day trial takes place on May 10th, 1933. He's awarded £50 plus costs, and then kind of bolstered by this win and desperate for more money, he attempts to sue memoirist Ethel Mannin for writing about him being a black magician, and that doesn't go well. He doesn't win that one, and here's a transcript from part of the court case. I like this. This constable, whatever lawyer's like, did you take to yourself the designation of the Beast 666? And then Crowley's like, yes. Did you call yourself the Master Theremin? Yes. What does Theremin mean? Great Wild Beast. Do these titles convey a fair expression of your practice and outlook on life? The Beast 666 only means sunlight. You can call me Little Sunshine. Yeah, kind of funny, but they weren't amused, and his case is tossed out. He loses it, and he's forced to declare total and absolute bankruptcy in 1935. His total debts come to about just under £5,000, zero assets. As he walks out of the courthouse, though, he runs into a 19-year-old woman named Patricia McAlpine, whom he would call Deidre, and she's furious that he lost the case. She's a big admirer. She's more upset than he is. And she propositions Crowley to have a child with her, and then she's almost 40 years younger than him, and already has she's almost 40 years younger than him, and he agrees to have a kid with her. And I'm sure he does. I'm sure he was just like, thank you, Lucifina, back in the game, just hit the jackpot. Well, Crowley and McAlpine perform sex magic. He's loving life again. She becomes pregnant and has a son, and Crowley names his only son Aleister Ataturk, and unlike most of his previous kids, this kid lives. Finally has his magic baby, but it doesn't go well he doesn't settle into domestic life. He's just not that guy. Summer 1937, he starts a public health business out of the house he's staying at, calls himself a doctor, starts selling elixir of life pills. He's just a snake oil salesman now, or snake oil salesman. There he goes. Sells body vibrators, infrared lights. And then his lady and young son leave him by 1937. I'm sure they do. And from then on, he would have no permanent lodgings, right? He's just some weird wackadoodle, like an elixir of life pill salesman now. 1938, he finds a new lover and patron, wealthy woman, Frida Harris. She gives him £2 a week for 6 years, kind of like a little allowance to live on. And by that time, his health is in rapid decline. He's fallen out of popularity. The great beast, living on a tiny allowance, man, how the mighty have fallen. He gets enough money from other sources to kind of continue to support his heroin habits. He'd take that habit to the grave. According to one biography, he averaged 4 to 6 grams of heroin per day in 43 and 44, and then allegedly 10 grams per day for the first half of 1945, which sounds like, actually, they wrote it as grains. I don't know why I switched it to grams. Maybe that's some other measurement of it. In 1945, in January, he moves, for the last time in his life, moves to Netherwoods, the Ridge, Hastings, a little home for kind of elderly, decrepit people in their final stages of life. He convinces one new young disciple to move there with him. This guy, Kenneth Grant, but Grant's parents convince him to move out, later that year. And now Crowley's alone. And this Grant was, interested in the occult and wanted to be under Crowley's tutelage. But then he fucking gets out of there. And then he just, lives out his last years in this little cottage with visits from his few remaining friends and occasional visits from his children. And he dies on December 1st, 1947, at the age of 72. And that takes us out of this Timesuck timeline.
Good job, soldier. You made it back. Barely.
So Crowley, quite the individual. And by the way, some will argue about his final years, saying that he died surrounded by friends and fellow intellectuals, and he didn't die penniless, and everything was great. Others will say he wasn't, evil at all, but just a victim of Christian persecution and rigid religious authoritarians. Just didn't like that he wouldn't toe the line, and there was all this propaganda about him. And I'm sure that some of his life was sensationalized, but man, nothing about his life speaks to me about him being a good dude. I'm not a huge poetry buff, but he did seem to have some real talent as a poet, an artist, an author. He was interesting. He was charismatic in some circles. But the whole live only for your desires hedonist philosophy of his is just so gross to me, and it's always been gross. People who just do what thou wilt. It's so fucking selfish, right? I mean, yeah, do what thou wilt as long as that's okay, and decent. But what if you're a piece of shit? That's kind of I don't trust everyone's nature with that. And I say this as someone who's lived, almost their entire adult life, kind of doing what I wilt to a certain extent, as being a comedic artist. It's not like I've worked every gig that I wanted to work. It's not like it was this perfect road. But I never had to have, not absolutely had to have a day job since I was like 23. There wasn't something in the arts. And pretty selfish career, really. As a comic, your career is literally all about you. But I still make choices for other people all the time, and glad to do so. I moved to Idaho for my kids, not for my career. Love Idaho, happy to be here. But it's not like it was an amazing career move. I mean, it's worked out great. I'm so happy. But it could have easily turned the other way. But that's what you do when you have kids. You sacrifice. Aleister did not sacrifice for anyone. He just seemed to take, and to what end? What, spiritual enlightenment, hedonistic pleasure, finding out these big secrets, solving these mysteries of the universe. Did he solve anything? Did he solve fucking anything at all? He got some STDs, had some estranged kids, got addicted to drugs for most of his life. And I feel like that's what kind of a life of unbridled hedonism, that's where it leads you, to ruin, to being alone. And I guess we all die alone, in our way, but at least some of us can feel the love of our loved ones as we pass over, but not Aleister, man. His life reminds me of this great Doug Stanhope bit, the final years of his life. Stanhope, one of my favorite comics of all time, maybe my favorite comic working today. Not for the faint of heart, but you time suckers are far from being queasy, so many of you probably would enjoy him. And he had this bit a couple albums back about living like there's no tomorrow, about people who say that, this whole hedonist philosophy about man, live like there's no tomorrow. But then he has this thought in the bit about but what if you don't die? What if you live like there's no tomorrow and you go fucking live it up at the casino and you just bet it all on, black on the roulette wheel, you just throw it all on the blackjack table, but then you don't die. But then what do? You've drank all your money away, you got STDs and unwanted kids. And then he says, maybe it's time to live my life like my dad's not sending me money anymore. Exactly. It's like I admire Aleister's conviction and courage to defy convention. He didn't seem to care what mainstream society thought of him. That is admirable in a sense. I just wish he could have put that courage and conviction to better use, Maybe fight on behalf of the poor and oppressed instead of just fighting to be able to stick your dick wherever you please. To quote the great philosopher Ozzy Osbourne, Mr. Crowley, what went wrong in your head? Oh, Mr. Crowley, excuse me, did you talk to the dead? Your lifestyle, to me, seems so tragic. With the thrill of it all, you fooled all the people with magic. You waited on Satan's call. But that call never came, did it? All that magic, and what trick did you really ever perform? You tricked yourself into thinking you could connect with other worlds when you didn't even manage to really connect, with this one. Well, for yourself, you disconnected. And then it was just all over. It was all over. And now we take a few more looks back at the strange days of Aleister Crowley with some top 5 takeaways.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
Number 1, in 1898, the 23-year-old Aleister Crowley was initiated into the occult group, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Founded by a group of Masons in the late 19th century, the society embraced mysticism and the occult. Other members included novelist Bram Stoker, Sherlock Holmes, creator Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, poet William Butler Yeats. Crowley was drawn to the group by their shared interest in alchemy, though some biographers have suggested that Crowley may have initially infiltrated the organization under orders from the British Secret Services, which I doubt. Number 2, Aleister developed the spiritual philosophy of Thelema, which centered around the concept of do what thou wilt and personal freedom. And for Aleister, what he wilted to do was mostly drugs and sex. Number 3, Aleister once tried to literally fuck a demon out of the desert. Not a lot of people can say that. Number 4, Aleister was vilified by the press as being the most wicked man in the world. He was not. Every murdering dictator in human history, and there have been a lot of them, were all more wicked than Aleister Crowley. Weirdest may have been most appropriate. He once broke up with a dude for coming too fast into his butt while they tried to summon the Roman god of Mercury. That's pretty weird. And number 5, new info. Aleister Crowley is President George W. Bush's grandfather and Barbara Bush's father. Now, while that's not true, it is a popular internet rumor, especially years back, based on Barbara's mother, Pauline Pierce, being in Paris during the 1920s and possibly partying with Crowley 8 months before the birth of Barbara Bush. And thanks to idiots of the internet, thousands of people still believe this to be true. Oh, man, don't believe everything you hear, but do believe most of what I tell you, unless I tell you I'm lying.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
Aleister Crowley deposited in the suck bank, tossed in the suck stack, washed, dried, folded, placed neatly on the suck shelf in the suck closet. Now go out there and grab some tickets. Come fucking see me. April 20, 21st, go balls deep in those Salt Lake City shows. San Francisco Punchline, April 25 to the 28th. Do it. Get in there. Cleveland next week. Charlotte, Atlanta, Birmingham, Huntsville, Nashville, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. All in one week of comedy. One big week of comedy coming up, man. More tour info at dancummins.tv. Check out those dates. Snatch up some ticks. Thanks to Harmony Velicamp, Jesse Dobner, the entire Timesuck team, the Bit Elixir guys, man. Special thanks to the new member of the Bojangles research team, Heather Rylander, for kicking off this week's research and suggesting this topic. I hope I did it as well as she hopes. Thanks also to Michael Suzio, Nick Perry, Ryan Hansen, Brian Minton, Nathan Scott. I'm sure many others I missed for suggesting this suck topic. Thanks for all the reviews and spreading the suck, man. That's, we're able to keep these bonus episodes going because you guys just keep spreading the word, man. Oh, man, damn near 3,000 iTunes reviews, which is unbelievable to me. It's happened so fast. Best way you can help the show is to spread the word. Post on social media. Tell your friends. Tell your coworkers. Reference it on Reddit. I don't know. Fucking walk down the street with a goddamn sign. Whatever you need to do. Spread the sweet suck. Every review helps. Monday topic coming up quick, man. The Bielski brothers. The real-life story of a Polish-Jewish family that inspired the Daniel Craig movie Defiance. A family that organized a militia, fought back against the Nazis with the mission to save as many Jews as possible, and they did save many. Powerful story of courage and compassion. Probably not as weird as today's suck, but possibly much more inspiring and even interesting. And I say possibly more, definitely more inspiring, possibly more interesting. And now I bring you some Timesucker updates.
Updates? Get your Timesucker updates.
Starting off with a heavy one from Timesucker Devin. Man, Devin, I hope you're listening, brother, and I appreciated our email exchange the other day. Devin writes in saying, Dear Master Suck, my name is Devin. I've been a fan of your stand-up for years. Your podcasts are a wonderful distraction from work. My favorite episode is Kurt Cobain, and that's when I realized you actually give a fuck about us, and hearing your speech at the end about hanging in there really helps me out. I'm writing this message to say thank you for all you've done. You're the coolest, most caring comedian I've seen. I'm in a very dark place right now in my life, and I may not pull through. Don't fucking say that, Devin. You fucking pull through. I overthink most bullshit. Dude, I hear you. I hear you on that, man. It's hard to turn the voices off sometimes. To a point, you overthink them, he says, where it breaks me down. Your podcast helps me escape for an hour or two. I greatly appreciate that. I'm seeing a therapist right now. Yes, good call. Fingers crossed that'll help, but enough about me and my bullshit problems. It would mean a lot to me if you give a shout out to my two best friends, Drew and Charlotte, to my best friend Drew, in Charlotte. Charlotte Shotwell? Sorry, the sentence reads, if you give a shout out to my two best friends, Drew and Charlotte Shotwell. So I'm not sure if it's, should I ask you, I guess, if it's Drew and Charlotte or Drew in Charlotte. Whoever, you know what, fucking Drew, you know who the hell you are. Why don't you fucking send another update? But yes. Without them, I would have taken an early exit years ago. They mean the world to me. I could never repay them back for all the love and caring. Hopefully the shout-out will be a good way to start thanking them. Thanks for your time. Keep on sucking. P.S. You should do an episode on Henry Rollins. He's a punk rock icon. I think you'll find the life he is living very interesting. Hope to hear back from you. And then we had our little exchange. We did talk, which was nice. And thank you, Devin. You're right, man. Henry Rollins, super interesting. Random trivia about Rollins. I've never met him, but I was on an episode of the Storyteller Show on Comedy Central, This Is Not Happening, with him. I think it was the season premiere of season 2 or season 3. Like, it doesn't matter. It's on YouTube now. But there was just me, for the televised version of the episode, it was just me and Henry Rollins. And we were both sharing stories of getting messed up on hallucinogens. And I never got to meet him. sadly, but I do think it's cool because I'm also a fan of him. That I got to be in the same episode with him. We taped on different days, and then they cut it together. But man, glad I can help you. Kind of get distracted from this dark place, Devin. Man, really glad, man. Bring a little sunshine your way. I love that you're getting some therapy. I hope the coming spring helps you out as well. I know this time of year, my mind's always the darkest, man. It's always the cloudiest, just because of the fucking gray winter days. Start to weigh on my brain muscle. Start to get me thinking some crazy thoughts from time to time. And I do have some other random advice, maybe in addition to whatever your therapist is saying. Find something to look forward to. This helps me so much. I know this may sound just simple and obvious, but find something to look forward to and always have something to look forward to on the horizon. I feel like that keeps your mind focused on the possibilities of tomorrow and not the troubles of yesterday or the present. Right? I mean, focusing on something can be as simple as getting out of fucking jail, or having a sunshine in the weather forecast. It could be a weight loss goal, it could be a weight gain goal, it could be a job you want, it could be something you're saving up to buy, it could be a fucking video game you want to get, it can be a class you want to take, a skill you want to learn. Maybe you want to pick up the guitar, maybe you want to play the skin flute. That's a cheap one. But for real, man, just pick something, and then when you get to pick something else. Always have something to look forward to. Forever forward, my friend. Forever fucking forward. Love you, man. Amelia Earhart update. Timesuck episode 55. The remains of Amelia Earhart may have been found. Graham Bagshaw, Will Burnson, Avery Augustino, Chris Aaron, Jake Bag of Donuts. Love that handle. And more brought this to my attention. Bag of Donuts wrote in saying, yo, Suckmaster D, here's an update on episode 55, Amelia Earhart. Looks like they finally may have fucking found her, smack dab in the South Pacific, like you said, or where you said she might be. This is so cool. Jance, using several modern quantitative techniques, including Fordisk, a computer program for estimating sex, ancestry, and stature from skeletal measurements, found that Hoodless, this is all about, they found these bones years ago, and now the new technology is saying that the initial the initial interpretation that they were not Amelia Earhart, that interpretation was wrong. And it says that this hoodless person had incorrectly determined the sex of the remains. The program, co-created by Jance, is used by nearly every board-certified forensic anthropologist in the U.S. and around the world. The data revealed the bones have more similarity to Earhart than to 99% of individuals in a large reference sample. The new study is published in the Journal of Forensic Anthropology. Jance also compared the bone lengths with Earhart's. Her humerus and radius lengths were obtained from a photograph with a scalable object. The scale was provided by Jeff Glickman of Photech. Her tibia length was estimated from measurements of her clothing in the George Palmer Putnam collection of Amelia Earhart papers at Purdue. A historic seamstress took the measurements, which included the inseam length and waist circumference of Earhart's trousers. Anyway, keep on sucking, motherfucker. Sorry I missed you in Baltimore, recovering from back surgery. Until next time, faithful space lizard, Jake Bag of Donuts. Dude, thank you, Jake. And I love the technology that can go into what we can do now. That's amazing. They can find one old photograph, and as long as it has a scalable object, some little can of what fucking can be a soda can, and as long as they know what size that is, they can figure out everything else now about how big the person was. That's amazing, man. And I did a little further research. I clicked the link you gave me, read that article. And this group of researchers, including this person Jance, they believe now that she died as a castaway on the island of Nukumaro. Man, what a terrible way to go. That little island's part of the Phoenix Islands in the Western Pacific. It's a coral atoll, no more than 6 kilometers wide, 3.7 miles. Briefly occupied in the past by incredibly small numbers of people, uninhabited today. What a fucking terrible way to go out. Man, who knows if her and Noonan, both lived initially, survived the crash, or if it was just her, and then you're stuck on this island. Ugh, what a bummer. I'm glad we have closure, but man, I would much rather die in the crash than to make it onto an island. You actually do crash land, and then you're just stuck there, and then you just fucking die. What, dehydration, exposure? Ugh, starvation? Oh, man, just let me die in the crash. Last update, thanks to Timesucker Matthew Chapman. Oh, man, I'm going to have some cool picks down the road. He's given me some gifts in San Antonio, and he also just got me certified as a reverend. Now I just got to get my doctorate somehow. Matt actually bought me the honorary title of Grand Master Brain Wizard from the Universal Life Church, and I'm now officially a Grand Master Brain Wizard and officially a pastor, and I guess I can do weddings. I just got to do a couple more steps, something real quick. It's all ready to go, and I can officiate now. So who knows what trouble that will lead me into. Thank you, Matt. You guys blow me away, man, with your kindness and just how cool you guys are. So thank you, Matt, and thank all of you, Devin, Bag of Donuts. Have a great weekend, and I'll be talking to you on Monday, and those were some great updates.
Thanks, time suckers. I needed that.
We all did.
All right, time suckers, space lizards, have fun. have fun this weekend, but not fucking a goat on an island fun, not bringing a demon out of the desert fun. All right? So have a less fun than that while you keep on sucking.